Welcome to Fueling Your Legacy, hosted by Samuel Knickerbocker. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a new, stronger foundation essential in creating your legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Welcome back to Fuel Your Legacy, and this whole week we've been talking about resilience and how to overcome things of our past and how to really thrive, even though our childhood would suggest that we aren't able to thrive, or that people have told us we couldn't thrive, how to overcome that and get to where we need to be and able to serve and help others get there as well. So today, as promised, we have Tiffany Barnes on our podcast, and we're super excited about that. I am going to give just a few quick announcements here because it relates to both of us. So if you go to my website, it is now 95% finished. There's one page that I'm going to do a little bit more updates on, but it's still, all the links are working finally, which is awesome. samknickerbocker.com. And there, if you go to the speaking page, then you'll be able to see some of the events that I'm going to be speaking at. Now, one of those events is called Level Up, and it's Tiffany Barnes' event. And it is going to be, I'm going to let her tell a little bit more about it in detail. I'm going to be specifically talking about money mindset and how to really engage yourself and identify who you are and gain the financial confidence to go for it. But ultimately, it's a real estate seminar, correct?
Correct.
Real estate workshop. I'm super excited to be there. Tiffany is fantastic, as you guys will soon find out. But that is there. Also, there's another event on May 11th that you are definitely welcome to go check out and get registered for. If you'd like free tickets, the first 2 people to take a screenshot of this and post it on social media and tag myself in it, Sam Knickerbocker, or Tiffany Barnes in it, then we'll get you a discount code or for the free ticket to get there on May 11th. And super excited for that. And then also, as always, you have my webinar there about being worthy and legacy blueprints. And then my ebook for, oh man, my mind just went blank. The 9 pillars of building a meaningful legacy, the why behind what we do. And so that is all on my website. You can get access to those. And then also there's a few offers there where you can get a free strategy session with me if that's something you're interested in. So all that's there. Now to introduce Tiffany. I've talked about her a little bit over this week because she's so awesome. But Tiffany really has come from a past. A lot of you guys have heard some of my past. In my opinion, her story is even more inspiring than mine to me, right? And she's gone through so much, and what she's been able to accomplish as herself and overcome is incredible. She's been able to, for multiple years, have a multiple six-figure income. And at this point, if she didn't ever want to work another day in her life, she probably wouldn't have to. She's set herself up to where everything she does now is out of passion and love for those around her. And so that is, I just love that, meeting with people who have been able to really essentially retire and just do what they love. The financial stress of life is gone, and now they're just doing their passion products. Now, do they get paid for those? Absolutely, and that's just the right thing to do. But the fact that she's in a position that she doesn't need to get paid for it, it changes the whole motivation. So that's why I'm so excited for her to be here and share that truth with you today. So with that introduction, go ahead, Tiffany. Let us know more about yourself, your history, your past, and things like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I want to talk, first of all, about maybe some of the trials and tribulations I went through that led up to my strength and being able to be financially free, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So by the time I was 15 years old, I had suffered all forms of abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, you name it. And the biggest thing for me was when going through that abuse, my self-worth went tremendously down, as you can imagine. It wasn't always rainbows and roses, and I wasn't always a strong person. But long story short, my stepfather had sexually molested me, and he was a military police officer at the time. Very intimidating man. And, when my mom and him would get into fights, she would get kicked into walls, or there was a lot of violence there. And when he was abusing me, he said, if you say anything to anybody, I'll kill you. Well, when a grown adult says that to you, and at the time I was 13 years old, says to a 13-year-old girl, hey, I'm going to kill you if you say anything, and you see these violent behaviors, you tend to believe him. And so I kept my mouth shut for a very long time. And there was a day that my mom had come downstairs, and I was getting ready for school, and she had inquired about the relationship between me and my stepfather. And I thought, well, that's weird, because my mom had never really cared much about my life. Quite honestly, she's a drug addict, and she's been a drug addict my entire life. And for her to come down and say, hey, what's going on between the two of you, and actually care about, maybe take stock in my life, I guess you could say, I thought, okay, maybe this one time she'll protect me. So I told her about the abuse, and she called him home. Long story short, he denied everything and gave her an ultimatum. And that ultimatum was that she had to choose between him or me. My mom didn't even hesitate. 3 seconds, turns to me and says, you have until tomorrow to get the bleep out of my house. And that was when my whole world was changed around. I'm 15 years old. My mother has now chosen this child abuser over her firstborn child. And you can imagine I just was awestruck. I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what options I had. I felt so betrayed and abandoned, and that I went to a trusted adult and nothing was done in a positive way, I guess. Mm-hmm. So the next day I go to school and basically checked myself out, turned my books in, things like that. And I'm walking home, and my mom is hosting a yard sale selling my stuff. So I was worth more to her as a dime, a quarter, or a penny for my material objects, like my bike, my clothes, things that were mine, in a yard sale than I was as her own flesh and blood daughter. And that was really, really tough to see, and, very, very impactful, but also hurtful. And I go downstairs to my room, what was left of it, and I grab this, those big black garbage bags that we put the leaves in the fall. And I put some clothes in there, and I had one of those little Tootsie Roll banks that we used to have as kids, if you mm-hmm. remember those. And I had like $2 and something saved in there. I take my Tootsie Roll bank and my bag of clothes, and I walk past my mom in her little yard sale. She didn't chase after me and say, hey, where you going, or anything. She didn't even care. And I walked to the local bus stop and got on the bus to take it into downtown Salt Lake City. I was living out in Kearns at the time, and just thought, okay, well, I got to get out of here. So I got on that bus and took it into downtown Salt Lake City. And, end of the route came. So I took my little transfer slip, and I'm standing there, and this is October. So, sunset sooner. We tend to get snow in October. It was just before Halloween. And I'm staring at these buildings in downtown Salt Lake City thinking, okay, where can I sneak in and sleep tonight? Or, where can I find a warm place to be? And this thought rolls into my mind of, well, maybe, just maybe, I could go to this one place, this one option I might have, and that was to go to my biological father's house up in Layton, Utah. And the reason I say that is I didn't have, aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents to go stay with, because a lot of my family is very dysfunctional. They're either in prison themselves, they are abusers themselves, they're on drugs themselves. And so I really felt that I didn't have a lot of a support network to reach out to. So I got on the next bus that takes me from Salt Lake City up to Layton. It actually goes all the way up into Ogden. I take my transfer slip, I get on this bus, and I'm sitting in the back of this bus, and I'm thinking to myself, number one, I'm crying, and I'm confused, and I'm hurt. And my whole world has been turned upside down in a matter of 24 hours. But I'm also wondering to myself, am I doing the right thing right now by going to my biological father's house? And the reason I thought that is because from my earliest memory until my parents divorced when I was 7, my father was very physically abusive towards me, and my parents were kids when they had me. They were 16 and 17 years old, high school dropouts. And it was a situation where I honestly feel that I used to question if my dad was my dad, because my mom was a very promiscuous woman. But I felt like she almost was like, well, I'm going to go find the most reliable guy and tell him that I'm pregnant with his kid, but I am my dad's child. You can tell that now. But anyways, so I show up at my dad's house. And actually, let me repeat that, go back a little bit. My father was very physically abusive to me. And I'm not here to make excuses for him, because abuse is wrong no matter what. He is since a changed man. I will tell you that for sure. He never laid a finger on me after my parents' divorce, but my mom was his princess, his queen. and he put her on this pedestal the entire time they were married. And whenever him and her would fight, he didn't want to lose her because she'd always threatened to leave. And so he would pick me up off of the floor from my coloring books as I'm just minding my own business and threw me across the room and broke my arm or my collarbone or whatever. And so I was kind of the punching bag, if you will, for his anger towards my mom. And so I'm questioning, am I going from one abusive situation into another? Am I just trading one evil for another? But I didn't have a lot of options. So I show up to my dad's house and tell him why I'm there. It takes me in, and because he has to take me in, he takes on a second job. And my dad's been a janitor all of his life. Nothing wrong with that. That's what makes him happy. And he doesn't have a lot of motivation to want more in his life. And the house I grew up in, I know you've shared your story of the house you grew up in. I didn't have to sleep underneath the stairs like you, but I slept in the kitchen. That's where my bed was. And so very humble beginnings. And I went back to that house, and he gave me the bedroom, and he slept on the couch. And, he did what he could. But because he took that second job on, and he didn't have a driver's license, he got his license revoked for a hit and run accident. So, just keeps getting better. But I became a latchkey kid. And if you don't know what the latchkey kid is, it's basically where you get up and your parents are gone, and you come home from school and your parents are gone. So you're kind of raising yourself, if you will. And I spent a lot of time by myself. So you can imagine all these things that happened to me that are very life-changing. And I spent all this time on my own, time with my thoughts. It was probably the worst thing that could have happened for me at that time, was spending so much time alone after what had just happened. And I fell into the lowest, darkest, deepest hole in my life. And I became anorexic. I grew up with my mom telling me all the time that I was fat or I was ugly, or she would have had an abortion, and many things that affect you as a child. No matter what, no matter how much you try to say, oh, I'm not going to listen to that, it seeps in when you hear it day in and day out. So became anorexic, but the worst of it was I became suicidal. And the reason I became suicidal, I believe, is because I felt if the woman who brought me onto this planet doesn't want me, what's the reason of being here? And I just felt like there was no hope, and in my adolescent mind. And so I made several attempts to end my life. And there was this morning that I woke up and I said to myself, today's going to be the day. Today's going to be the day I end my life, and I'm just done, and I don't want to be here anymore, and what's the point? And then I had this other voice in my head that said, if you do that, who really wins? Like, you're letting this defeat you, and you're stronger than this. And it could be that Jiminy Cricket, if you will, just that voice inside my head. It could be the Holy Ghost, who knows what it was, but it was something that told me, get up, keep going, you're going to be okay. And I went out and I sought counseling and help. And it took 2 years of a lot of intense counseling and working with my social worker and things like that to get me to a place where I could look in the mirror and feel worthy and feel, what? I am beautiful, and it's okay what happened to me. It happened for a reason, and there's going to be a lesson here. And I sat down with my social worker and I said, well, now what? I've gotten myself better, but I don't really want to go live with Dad because it wasn't the best of circumstances, and obviously couldn't go live with my mom. And so he said, well, we're going to have to put you in foster care. I was like, oh no, I didn't want to be a foster kid. I was bounced around so much as a kid as it was. I went to 23 different elementary schools, and some of which I would go for about a month or two. And then my mom would get in a fight with whatever boyfriend she was with at the time and bounce us to a different school. And then we'd be right back a couple months later. So I had a lot of abandonment issues and connection issues with people as it was just from my childhood. But I said to my social worker, I really don't want to do that. That just is not something I want to do. And I was kind of kicking and screaming about it. And he said, well, there's this other option, but the odds are stacked against you. And I'm like, well, okay, it kind of seems like the odds have been stacked against me so far, right? Exactly. Just, tell me what it is. And he said, well, you can do something called an emancipation. I'm like, well, what's that? I didn't know what that meant. And he kind of described it to me and told me what the steps would be. And he said, well, the reason why I'm telling you that the odds are stacked against you is because there's only one case in the state of Utah at your age. So by that time I was 15 years old, that anyone has ever really won an emancipation. And that just means I legally divorced my family. I said, well, what's the worst the judge can say? No. And then I'm just back to where I am now. And he said, well, let's go for it. And so I went through the process and everything and stood before that judge and said, hey, I'd like you to grant me custody of myself, basically. And he said, yes. And I was the second case in the state of Utah at 15 years old at the time. I'm sure there's been others since then, to be a legally emancipated minor. So let me describe a little bit about what that meant.
Yeah.
So what that meant was I could check myself in and out of school. I could write my own tardy notes, but it also meant that I had to pay bills. And I moved in. You should have seen the look on this couple's face. I went and was looking through the paper. That's back when we were actually using classifieds, right? Like the actual paper. And I found a basement apartment up by the University of Utah. Now I'm going to Kearns High, but I'm trying to live over by the University of Utah because I had enough forethought to think, okay, I want to go to the U. So when I graduate high school, I'll already be up there. And I commuted from, up on the East Bench back to Kearns, back and forth every single day. And sometimes my car worked, sometimes it didn't. So sometimes I'd have to take the bus, and it was quite a ride, and not the school bus, like the UTA bus.
Yeah.
And so I rented this basement apartment. I show up at these people's house. I'm like, hi, I'm here to rent your basement apartment. And by this time I was probably like 16 or so. And they look at me like, where's the cameras? Am I being punked? Like, you're here to rent the basement apartment? I was like, oh, let me just kind of share something with you. So I'd always carried my emancipation papers with me that would show, hey, this is all legal. I'm not a runaway. I am my own guardian. And they were just going through medical school up at the U, just looking to make some extra cash and rent that basement apartment. And they took me in. So I was paying $500 a month rent. And I paid that sophomore, junior, senior year. And I ended up working 3 jobs my senior year. I was working 2 jobs my sophomore and junior year. Had to pick up another one my senior. But the reason I tell that to you is because looking back, in a lot of ways, I feel that I was kind of robbed of a childhood in a sense. Because while some kids got to, or most kids I should say, got to, get asked to go to the prom or be on sports teams or go hang out with their friends and have sleepovers, I didn't have that luxury. I was too busy being an adult like their parents, having to make ends meet. And there were many times where it was a decision, do I pay the light bill or do I buy myself food? And so I got it down to a science where I would buy a box of saltine crackers because they have the 4 packs in there, right? And I'd buy a couple of cans of kidney beans for the protein, and that's what I would eat for a week. And a lot of my faculty members at Kearns High knew that I was the girl with the special circumstance and things like that. And one year for Christmas, it was so amazing. The faculty came to my house, and they brought me Christmas dinner and a Christmas tree and presents that they had all done and done that for me. And it was really amazing to see just that people did care, and I wasn't totally alone, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So kind of fast forward, to make a long story short, ended up still graduating with a 4.0 while carrying those 3 part-time jobs, and got 23 different scholarship offers, and ended up getting one for the University of Utah, which was my big hope to get into. And it was a full ride for leadership and academics. And that's kind of where I started my career. Got into school, and you can imagine how hard it is to get scholarships, right? Yeah. So it was so incredibly awesome to have this full ride education. And I started as a sophomore, not a freshman. I tested out in my first year, and I had a guy that was coming into where I was waitressing all the time, and he was a real estate investor. And once you waitress quite a bit and you have regulars come in, you tend to talk to them. And one day I got up some guts and I said, hey, what is it you do for a living? And he goes, I'm a real estate investor. And I said, I've always wanted to get into real estate. My parents never owned a house. A lot of my family don't own properties. And I'm like, I'm interested to know more about it. And he's like, well, I charge $10,000 for mentoring. I'm like, I can barely pay to get home on the bus tonight. I just take my tips to live on. And it kind of bothered me. I thought, man, so I guess it takes money to make money. And I didn't have any of it. And it was discouraging. And it just kicked around in the back of my mind a lot. And he came in, I don't remember how many months later, and I said, hey, I have something I want to talk to you about. And he's like, okay, cool. What is it? And I was like, well, I know you said you charge $10,000 for mentoring. And I'm going to be honest, I don't have that. But what I do have is time. And what I'd be willing to do for you is donate as much time as possible to alleviate your stresses. I'm like, I'll pick up your dry cleaning if I need to. I will drop off your mail. I will be there to make coffee every morning. I will make the copies. I will vacuum the floors, anything just to be around you, because I knew, birds of a feather flock together, and your network is your net worth. So I knew if I was around him and all I was doing was picking up little crumbs on the floor of the knowledge that he had in real estate, I would somehow, little by little, become successful too. And he saw that work ethic. And after about 6 months of that, he approached me and said, you know what, Tiff, I want to help you get your first deal done. And I was like, are you serious? And my first deal, I only made $5,000. But $5,000 to me at the time was amazing. And I rolled that into another deal and I made $3,500. So now I'm up to $8,500 total in profits. And my next deal, I made like $4,000. So not every real estate deal is going to be a $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 profit, but I made something and I was gaining that experience, and that money was awesome. And I was like, okay, why am I going to college when I could be making a ton of money in real estate? So I dropped out of college on a full ride scholarship to pursue real estate. That was a $40,000 full ride education. I just said, I'm going to leave that behind. And that was a big decision for me, and that's kind of where I started my real estate journey, and been doing real estate now for 15 years, and just started kind of doing stuff for myself on my own, because I've been working for someone else, had my own company doing contract work, but it just didn't feel 100% for me what I wanted to accomplish. And so now I've started the Level Up Wealth Academy that you're going to be speaking at. And I want to teach people how to create sustainable wealth and leave a legacy for their families, just as you do. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. I don't generally have people tell their whole story, but yours,
I did just tell it. Sorry.
No. I invited you to, because I think your story is so impactful. Like for me, and there's so many things that I could talk about. I'm going to bring out 2 or 3 principles that I just think I've never experienced.
Yeah.
So, some of them I have, but some of them I haven't. One of them is like the idea of having to carry papers as credibility, right? Like, and not to make light of slavery, but like the idea that like you cannot be taken seriously. In fact, you could be in serious legal trouble if you don't have the documentation that says you're not in trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, just the other day on news, there was somebody who got deported, who his spouse died in the military, and there's no reason for him to be deported, but just because he didn't have the proper documentation, the right paperwork, basically, he got deported to Mexico.
Oh, wow.
Just like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it's just like,
oh, wow.
This stuff is still happening, and it's something that it's so far out of my realm of experience in life. I haven't come across people like that. So it's so crazy to think that that's still a thing.
Yeah.
I personally started working full time when I was 11. And I never even felt like there were people who were like, why aren't you in school, or why are you not working? But I never had to produce documentation. I was like, don't ask me questions, right? Like I just slough it off. But like the idea that like you were legally allowed to transact as an adult, but everybody would not say that you were.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just such a fascinating thing, maybe for you as Fuel Your Legacy audience, to think about what would that be like? Put yourself in that situation. Just try and even like have empathy or just try and comprehend that experience. And how can you be more understanding of other people? When I first met Tiffany, we were at a Christmas dinner party.
Yeah.
And I am somebody who's always looking, I'm sure she's the same way, right? But I'm always looking for who can I serve and how can they help me grow my business? Like I love connecting with people, and I love thinking, how can we have mutual benefit? And so when I first met Tiffany, that's all I thought. It's like, I know she does real estate. I know I network with a lot of real estate agents and I serve them from a financial perspective. I know she does Airbnb. My brother has an Airbnb. So I was like, okay, we can make this connection. So that's all I'm thinking about. It wasn't until months later of getting to know Tiffany that I really understood her story. And it's just crazy. You have no idea who people are until you get to know them.
Right.
Until you're willing to listen to their story. So thank you for sharing your story, and hope everybody took the opportunity to sit there and just listen and think about what would that be like. So that was the first thing that I want to just point out, just because it's so random to me. Like, I can't even fathom it. But the other thing is, you might be in a situation where you're thinking, I don't have money to invest in myself. The idea that it takes money to make money. This is such a flawed, false opinion that it holds people back. It holds people back from so much in their life because they think, well, I don't have the money and I need money to get money. Or I can't get a job because every job wants experience. No, every job wants, if they're going to put out money, they want to know that they're paying for value. That's what they want. And they want to know that if they're going to pay out some of their value, their earnings, that they're going to get value in return. And some companies use a credential or experience to demonstrate that they're going to get value. But what Tiffany did is such a crucial thing for people who are really successful. I listen to a lot of podcasts about successful people, and I read lots and lots of books, and successful people do what Tiffany did. They say, look, I have no money, but what I do have is an immense amount of value that I can add to you. Right. I will add value in any way that you need value added. Like, I will do everything that I can. I will not ask for payment. I will do it for free just to be around you. And that's a part of fueling your legacy. That's a skill and a trait that people need to understand. That is what creates resilience. That's what creates the ability to become more, is by surrounding yourself with those people, even if it's free, even if you're putting out tons of value to get there. The fact that you were willing to just do it just to get the experience, that's what wealthy people do. That's what people who have built a legacy do, is they have that quality of just willing to give value without expectation of financial money in return. And people, the reason that your mentor, whoever that was initially, I'm sure the reason he was able to do that is because that's how he thinks too. Wealthy people think in value rather than money.
Right.
But when they're having the conversation with somebody who only operates in money, we have to put a price tag on our value, or else people don't understand that it's valuable. It's this weird thing. And so money is important, but it's not everything.
Right.
And so I love that you understood that, or at least you were willing to do it to the point where it's like, I can add value.
And you know what? If I hadn't have done that, Sam, I probably would not be where I am today financially. That was literally the first step to catapult me, obviously, into real estate.
Right.
And to the success that I found. And that's where I found all of my financial success thus far. And it's funny, now that you're sitting here talking about it, I was like, I didn't think about it as no big, it was a no big deal thing. But you're right. If I hadn't have done that, who knows? I would have still been in school, gotten my communication degree. Who knows where I'd be right now as far as finances and fueling my legacy.
And also another instance, the third point, the nothing to lose mentality, right? Every time that she made the decision, when she got kicked out of her house, she had nothing to lose to go and ask her dad. I mean, she was either on the street or ask this other person, nothing to lose. And so why not go and at least find out? When it went to emancipation, look, you either are going to be in foster care, well, I have nothing to lose. It's just a decision. Why not try for the better situation and then fall back on the thing I don't want? So many people, they settle for what they don't want because they're scared of being rejected. And it's like, it's so interesting to see the way successful people like yourself, they think, and they've fostered this nothing to lose mentality. Well, I'm going to go and rent this place and hopefully somebody will accept me because I have nothing to lose. Like, I have to find somewhere to stay. Then in college, waiting and asking this person, I have nothing to lose. I may as well just offer everything I can. And if he says no still, then I'm in the same position I'm in. Right. You still have a full ride scholarship. You still have everything. You have nothing to lose. Once you decide, okay, I'm going to leave college, you might say, well, I had $40,000. I lost that. But also, what were you gaining?
Right. Exactly.
You already, at that point, you had a history of being successful and defying all odds. And so you had the muscle or the habits built up to go for it, regardless of what you might lose in college. You knew you'd gain more by going for your dream or chasing down real estate.
Exactly. And you talk about fueling your legacy. I use kind of the same type of an acronym. I talk about we all have a flame inside. And sometimes it's a little spark when you want to give up on life, like I have had in my life. Or it's a roaring, raging fire when you get excited about something. But it's about, realizing that you've got this fire inside, and to keep it burning and keep, feeding it, because that's what's going to keep you going. And that really has been a big attribute to my success.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's great. So I'm curious for you, because there's a whole aspect that we've not even touched on.
Okay.
And that is your charity that you started in high school. Like
yes.
Nobody, like you've just heard all the crap that she went to. You just heard ultimately her success. That her real estate has taken her to speak on stages, earning literally hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just to speak and educate people on real estate. So she went from not knowing anything, serving, doing whatever this person asked, to earning hundreds of thousands of dollars teaching the things that she learned through serving. So she definitely made a return on investment better than she would have got it going to college. Okay. But what you don't know yet, sort of, I've introduced it, but she's also like one of the most charitable, loving, giving back people out there. She's had all the success, but she's also just giving it all back to people to help them get out of the same situation she's in. So share a little bit about your legacy, because I think when did you decide that this is what you wanted your legacy to be, and then what was the process of getting that started?
So when I was emancipated and had that ability to check myself in and out of school or write notes, there's one specific day that kind of catapulted me to start Share. So it was 1998. I was going to Kearns High, sophomore, and I was going into my Spanish class, Miss Linares, and I was writing myself a tardy note because I had been late. And so I'm hurrying up, and I'm like, please excuse Tiffany Barnes for being late. Thank you, Tiffany Barnes. And I hand it to the teacher. And I had a lot of kids that would bully me because of that. Like, that's not fair. She gets to write her own notes. Or they, tease me in the hallways. Or, oh, you're the girl with the special circumstance. Some kids thought I was cool. They thought, oh, let's go have a party at your house. There's no supervision, And, one day a kid came up to me after I'd written my note. And he said, what's your special circumstance? Like, what happened to your parents? Did they die in a car accident? Did they get cancer? Like, why do you live on your own? And I said, well, I am emancipated, and kind of described that to him and told him what it was. And he said, well, why? I said, well, because I was abused. I came from a very abusive environment, and this was my way to separate myself from it. And he said, I'm being abused, and had never told anyone before. And I started to notice the more I was sharing my story of why I had this special circumstance going on, that people were starting to come out of the woodwork and feel trust with me to say something's happening to me or something has happened to me, and a light bulb goes off. And that light bulb was that, again, that Jiminy Cricket voice that said, don't end your life, this is defeating you. That same voice said, this is the reason you didn't end your life, is because you're meant to be a catalyst for others to realize that you can say something about it and you will be protected. And I don't know if you know the statistics, but it's 1 in 4 women, 1 in 6 men before the age of 18 suffer some form of abuse. And the number one form of abuse is sexual abuse. 90% of all abuse happens within the home or someone that person knows. So just based on statistics, you go into a grocery store, you see all the people in the grocery store, just based on statistics alone, there are a ton of people in that grocery store that have been through abuse. It's an epidemic. So what I did is I said, why don't I start a support group after school where kids like me who've gone through abuse or are in abusive homes, we get together, and all we do is we do our homework together. If we were I was in the orchestra, I played the viola since the 2nd grade, and we would practice our musical pieces together. Or we had a bad day and we just wanted to cry about it and share it and have a shoulder to cry on and people who understood us. And that support group, we said, well, let's come up with a name. So the name we came up with was Students Helping the Abused React and Empower, which is Share. And all we did is we helped each other react in a positive way so that we didn't turn to teenage pregnancy or gangs or the wrong crowds, and we stayed on that straight and narrow path. And little did I know that, and it was just 10 kids, just 10 of us. One of the kids in that group told their friend that was going to Granger High, one of our, rival schools, I'm in this after school thing and I love it and it's helped me so much. And they're like, well, tell me more about it. And they said, well, I want to start that at my school. And then another school wanted to do it. And so this support group that started, it coincided with 10 kids, started growing within the school districts, and they were doing it in other schools. And little did I know that was going to gain so much momentum that it was going to have, you know, when I was 19, I was giving a lot of motivational talks to faculties and elementary schools. I'm actually going to be giving one at Stansbury High next month to their Hope Squad, you know, sharing my story and having these kids realize you're not alone. But anyways, so I started speaking on it and realizing what an impact I was making. And I said, I need to turn this into a national thing. And so I turned it into a 501c3 nonprofit. And it now stands for, it's still SHARE, but it stands for Sharing Hope for the Abused Through Resilience and Empowerment. And my passion, the reason I get up every single day, my legacy, if I die tomorrow, I've already left it. I've already created a legacy that will live on long beyond my lifetime and, you know, hopefully forever, in stopping the epidemic of abuse. And what we do is we educate people on how to be resilient. And in turn, by being resilient and not letting this affect them in a negative way, let me give you an example. 95% of all people incarcerated right now in our prisons have suffered some form of abuse. Think about that. Most of them, I would venture to say, and I don't know everybody's life, but they probably didn't know how to handle it. They never dealt with it in a positive, resilient way. They act out. I'm not saying that's the reason they become criminals or incarcerated, but I guarantee you it plays a part. And so by helping people realize, hey, this is just a chapter in my life, not my whole life story. I'm not going to use this as a crutch. You're reversing the cycle of abuse with yourself, and that causes a ripple effect. And by doing that, you're empowering others as well to do the same, and we're ending the cycle of abuse one person at a time. It's not going to end in my lifetime. It won't. The numbers are just so sickening and terrible that it won't end in my life, but I've started a legacy to continue that on regardless of if I'm here on this planet or not.
Yeah, I think it's just so crazy. It's so cool to hear that and hear that movement. I have a similar mission. I approach it slightly different. I approach it from a financial standpoint, but I think that ultimately, like, serving that demographic, serving those people and giving them the confidence or the resilience to move on and how to frame that properly. So many people don't know how to, it's exactly right. They don't know how to deal with the abuse. And then the story, and when you mentioned this in your story, where all this had happened and then you became a latchkey kid, and then what people don't realize is that all of those bad experiences, they're replaying in the mind of the abused or of the victim, and which intensifies the victimhood to the point where it seems so big, so much that it's hard, you don't want to live anymore. But when you can go and help somebody realize exactly as you said, this is just a moment, this is just a time. And there's a lot of, I don't know how you feel about your childhood. My childhood's not quite as bad, but like, I wouldn't trade my childhood with anybody. Like, I love everything about it, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Like, both things can be true at the same time. The person I've become through the trials that I've been through, I love who I am today. I love every part of me, and I'm still striving for things that are better, but I've accepted everything. And I wouldn't want anybody to go through what I went through. And both things can coexist. And so when you help these people not just become resilient, but the empowerment of now go use your experience for good, go share it. You have to realize she's holding this after school program. She's still working 3 jobs, and she's still a 4.0 student. Like, she was busy doing what she does, loving and caring and protecting those around you. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to think, you know, sometimes you discount your life and the steps that you've made, but then when you sit and talk about it, you're like, oh, wow, that is pretty cool what I did. So,
yeah.
And another thing that's really kind of helped me a lot as well is I ran the torch in the Olympics, the 2002 Winter Olympics, and I took the flame from Steve Young. And I'm writing a book right now, but I refer to that flame a lot, lighting your flame within, which was actually the theme for the Olympics, because so many people don't share their gifts to help feed other people's flames. Because to me, success is not my car, it's not my purse, it's not my house, it's not my bank account. success is what you can inspire other people to do because you're in a good position financially, emotionally, spiritually. That's what true success is to me. That's my definition. So
yeah, and I would completely agree. So you had obviously your parents early on, or your mom and stepdad. How did you go about silencing the naysayers? Like, what was the process, or do you even remember the process of silencing the naysayers? And are you still having to do that currently in aspects of your life today, or have you like just transcended all naysayers?
I mean, I'm not perfect, for sure. I have definitely, I think one of the biggest things is there's this quote I love that says, when life hands you lemons, throw them at mean people and hope that the juice gets in their eyes. Now, of course, that's being facetious. But, people always say make lemonade out of lemons. But for me, you wouldn't believe the people who have come out of the woodwork in my life since I was a millionaire at 28 years old. I don't know if I've shared that with you or not, but
I know that, but that's awesome.
I'm 36 now. So for 8 years, I've been able to carry that status. And once people started to see, oh, she's got a house, she's got a couple cars, she's got this, that, and the other, they identified that as success. And so I have a lot of people who've known me since I was a little kid and said, oh man, Tiff, I knew you were always going to be someone, but they were never there for me when I was younger. And then they'll say, now, can I borrow $100? Or let's go to lunch. You got it, right? It's on you, right? And I'm like, no, and people want to take delight in my success. And there's this quote by Will Smith that says this: if you're not going to be there for me during my struggles, don't you plan on being there with me during my successes? People want to take delight in your success, but not be there with you on your journey. And I think I've done a really good job of kind of shutting out those red lights and those naysayers, as I call them. But one of my biggest naysayers, believe it or not, is my biological father, even to this day. So he doesn't believe that people make money in real estate. He was saving up all this money when I was a little girl before my parents divorced to buy us a mobile home. And he had to use that money to pay for the divorce. And since then, he just thinks real estate is like the devil or something. And he rents. He's never owned a house. He's 55 years old and has rented his entire life. And he sees my house and he knows I've got Airbnbs and other rental properties. I've done flips, all kinds of various things. And I used to travel 40 weeks a year up until last year for the last 15 years. And my dad thought that I was a traveling prostitute. My dad literally thought. So I have this nice Mercedes car. It's a $120,000 car, brand new. I didn't pay that for it. And I'm not saying that to be braggadocious, just painting a picture here. And when I pulled up one day to my dad's house in this car, he goes, who's something did you have to suck to get that car? I'm like, excuse me? I had a cell phone store downtown. And it ended up being a failure, but I had it for a couple of years. And same thing. Who did you have to sleep with to get this store? And I'm like, Dad, I didn't sleep with anyone. I didn't do any of those things, This is all me. I created the success. Well, I know why my dad's that way. My mom cheated on my dad profusely, and that's what ended their marriage. So he has this idea in his mind, that's how all women are. And he's never been in a relationship since. He hasn't been in a relationship in 30 years, not even on a date. And so, one of the hardest things for me, and he's still that way to this day, is to block him out. But I have this mentality of if you don't forgive people, it's a cancer in your body. And I just am very careful how close I let him get to me. But he is probably the biggest naysayer in my life to this day. And it's because he has his own limiting beliefs and negative beliefs about money. And he's never been financially free. He's always lived, like to say, a very humble lifestyle. He's been at his job for 20 plus years and doesn't even make $40,000 a year at his janitorial job. And so it's so hard for me sometimes to, I remember, let me just give you one more example. I called my dad up when I bought my first house, which is the house I live in today. And I said, oh my gosh, Dad, I'm a homeowner. I bought a house. This is so cool, right? And he's like, why would you want to buy a house? Who's going to take care of it while you're out of town? Who's going to mow the lawn? What happens if something breaks? And I'm like, how about hey, that's awesome. My daughter bought a house, and that's just the way he is. And I can't change it, but he's still my dad. And I still want to have some sort of a relationship with him. So he's probably my biggest naysayer. So as far as handling that, anyone else, I can block him out like no other. But my dad still does it to me. And once in a while, he'll get a button or a nerve. But I still deal with it today.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Actually, and I'm not at all saying that he's a hater, but that's how I've labeled him in my ebook.
Yeah.
But the whole ebook is about really the reason that we need to be successful. And I truly believe from the people who don't believe in you to all the way down to the country to the people who need your service in your faith or just in society, the reason to be successful is to be an example, to be a flame to others, like to be out of just pure love. Even the people who hate you and really, really want you to fail, you've got to be successful out of love for them, because the reason they feel that way is because they don't believe it's possible for them.
Exactly.
Right? And until they see it enough and they're around it enough. And the other thing is, like, people, I'm glad you haven't like exiled your dad. Some people like exile their family, like, oh, I can't, you're a negative person, so I'm going to get you out of my life. That is not, I don't believe that's what people mean when they say, be careful who you hang around, right? You still need to be a light to these people. You still need to be an example to them. If you disown them, that just furthers their opinion of the negative.
Right.
You can't disown them. Now, do you have to protect yourself? Do you have to maintain boundaries? Yes, there's a lot of things, especially when you start getting money, you have to do and orchestrate. But you can't desert them, because if you desert them, then you're just feeding into their negative belief, which is ultimately harming them.
Right.
It's a fascinating, like, double-edged sword type thing where you just have to manage it.
Right.
And if you don't know how to manage it, get a mentor who is managing it. Right. That's what I love about Tiffany is she's dealing with this. She's dealt with it her whole life, and she's putting on workshops, seminars to help you manage it, to help you become the person that you need to become. And yeah, definitely. If you guys all are free, the level up event, it's on June 7th and 8th, correct?
Correct.
June 7th and 8th here in Sandy. If you can be in Sandy, Utah on June 7th and 8th, it's absolutely worth your time. And to add further value there, I don't know exactly the pricing for it, but I know that she was getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very similar, if not the same, or lower quality of material for somebody else. And it's not even close to that price now for you to get access to that same information, because she's become successful and she's willing to give back to her society and her community to make sure that happens for you guys. So don't treat it lightly. Take advantage of the opportunity to be around people like Tiffany, who can really elevate you and elevate your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it. So how can people support you, either support your charity or get in contact with you and learn more about what you do from you? Like, where are your Instagram handles? Where do you hang out online, website, things like that?
Okay. I'd like to share my nonprofit one first, and that's sharethemovement.org. And on there, you can see what Share is all about. We actually have a big event coming up on the same day as your event. I'm so bummed about this. This is May 11th. It's going to be at Wheeler Farm, completely free event.
Yeah, don't go to that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. No, if you have to choose, I almost would say go to that.
No.
I know, she's kind,
but it's going to be a youth empowerment day. And the reason I chose that is it starts with our youth. And that's when I was the most impacted. And that is also when I would say at my biggest turning point, to either go down in a spiral or rise up from the ashes like a phoenix, right? Mm-hmm. So it's for ages 10 to 18. You can find all the information on there. So sharethemovement.org. I also have a podcast. I just recently started. We just did our 5th episode. It's called the Speak Loud Podcast. And you can also go to speakloudpodcast.com to listen to any episodes on there. If you want to be a guest, if you want to share your story of abuse, we don't focus on abuse. I want to be very clear on that. We do talk about it, but we focus on the triumph and the resiliency. And again, we want people to be empowered through those stories. And as well as my Instagram handle, is at Tiffany_Vixen, because I am a real estate vixen. That's what I would like to say. As well as if you go find me on Facebook, just type in Tiffany Barnes Utah, and my Facebook will come up, and you can find a link on there for my Sustainable Wealth Mastermind coming up June 7th and 8th.
Awesome. Yeah, and we will I'm going to have all those links in the show notes here. So if no matter what device you're listening to this on, you should be able to look at the show notes, and then all the links will be there for the various things. But I'm so grateful for that. So we have the last 5 questions.
Okay.
We call it Legacy on Rapid Fire. So for this session specifically, it's like a one word to one sentence answers.
Okay.
We're just going to move through these really fast.
Okay.
But so the first one is, what do you believe is holding you back from reaching the next level of your legacy?
I would say having the right resources and components. I've got some of them, but not all of them right now.
Awesome. And what is the hardest thing that you've ever accomplished? I know there's probably a lot, but what's the hardest thing you've ever accomplished?
The hardest thing I've ever accomplished is asking for help, because I'm not a person that asks for help when I was going to take my life, and reaching out and saying, here's the spot I'm at. I want to get out of it. Please help.
Yeah, that would be hard. So what would you say your greatest success is to this point in your life?
Well, I would say my greatest success, or the proudest moment I've had in my life, is running the Olympic torch. And the reason for that is there's a spirit that follows that flame that touches your very soul. And it's something that I still carry with me today. And it's been such an honor to take part in that. And it's fueled me to continue on now.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's a huge honor it's a world stage honor, which is so cool. You got to do that. So what, again, these are so hard because I want you to share so many of them, but just one.
Okay.
What is one of the secrets do you believe has contributed most to your success?
Never giving up and getting back up.
Awesome. And then what one book or 2 or 3 books would you recommend to the Fuel Your Legacy audience?
So I mentioned a couple to you before, but there's one that I'm reading right now that I've read probably 10 times, The 4 Agreements. And one of the agreements is don't take anything personal. And that pertains to my dad and the situation that we're in. So I'd say The 4 Agreements is a huge one to live by. And then also Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Classic. It's been on the national bestseller list for many, many, many years. And there's so many great principles in there that we can apply to today's world.
Yeah, absolutely. And we reviewed that book on Wednesday, so you should have a fairly recent opinion of Think and Grow Rich, or at least concept. But again, nothing will replace, no review, no cliff notes, no whatever, the Sparks notes or whatever they're called.
Yeah. Quora.
Nothing is going to do justice to reading that book. I think it is probably the greatest book ever written, and I will exempt religious text from that, because that's a controversy depends on your religious affiliation. Outside of religion, though, probably the greatest book ever written. And inside of religion, the concepts taught in it, they could be studied right along with whatever religious text you subscribe to, and it will change your life.
Yep.
Like it will give you deeper understanding of whatever religious text you choose to study. So fantastic book. So now here's the final question.
Okay.
And I love this question because we kind of touch on it throughout the episode, but it seems that I always get a different answer. So now we have to pretend you're dead. Okay.
Okay.
You're dead. You've lived your full life, but you're dead now. And it's now 6 generations. Okay. So like your great grandchildren are sitting around the table talking about you and your legacy. What do you want them to be saying?
I want them to say, because of you, I didn't give up. I want them to realize that maybe I'm not in their life then, but my legacy has been so strong and so inspiring that it inspires them in their life in that time and period.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany. I super appreciate you taking the time out of your busy Saturday.
No worries.
To be here and to really help us get a greater understanding of where we're at to put in perspective where we're at and give us hope that there's more and greater things in the future if we're willing to put in the effort and the time. So
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Again, just a quick reminder, if you are going to take a screenshot and post this on social media, tag myself or Tiffany in it, and we will get you discount codes to either one of our workshops, actually. We'll make sure that you get access to both, and then you can choose which one you're available for, and we'd love to see you there and be able to share more of our story and our experience, and then also some more of the tactical things, actually how you can apply some of the principles we've talked about in your life and move forward that way. So
absolutely. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy. Thanks for joining us today. If what you heard resonated with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me so I can give you a shout out on the next episode. And thanks to all those who have left a review. It helps spread the message of what it really takes to build a legacy that lasts. Catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy.